땅아서 대체들 가서 대대나 주기 동무 마스마시온 사진 제노는 동무 니바데 시접 심바다 다 치마데도 대대 기침을 시작해 말에 가르쳐서는 개치시대 단다 지수노는 차대고 그런다 그제 다데 바로라 시디시도 다데 바로라 저는 그 미시기 저한다고 요네 저한테 아주 좋았는 제도 그거 맨날 지진이 마티시도 하는 얘기 다데서 기침을 시작해 말했어
So then the explanation has mainly been based around the first two sections, right? Out of the 8 divisions that we saw, the first and the second division. But these are really kind of the most important, so it was important that we kind of cover those. And the remaining ones, it's not as important as at least having this foundation in those first two. So what we can do now again is if you guys have any questions, then we can have some question and answer, and if not, then we'll continue a little bit more. But yeah, please.
I have many, but I can have two really. So going back to the question she asked yesterday, how if you reincarnate, you don't bring that consciousness back. Okay, like if you do another rebirth, you cannot remember, So, if you reincarnate into a lower realm or into a God realm, do they have a consciousness? Do they know that they are in that realm? Because then what is the point if you do good karma to reincarnate in these realms, in the higher realms, or if you do bad karma to reincarnate into the hell, but if you're not gonna remember what you did, you don't know why you're there. Either one. So you know what
in natsu de kare kam jamindala samsam de nyewala kyowalangire samsam la pakamla de kyowalangire in an kong kasan kichiwanang shinde natsu de kyowangama de jempa je jogina majena anadi kare kepa mepa double chali marate pensana de kewa chik sheet and sheet perne anadi jela jangi mare anadi sandi nyawa ene re and dimi shampoo chik nyongna ane keyo mare pensana jempa je jogire yana di hakam la kewa na di dewa shampoo nyongna yang anadi Keo mare, jela jumper jet of your and some comfort de kare jangi year me yana de kare then the kinyamyong yona and the kare majena and a young method double chalimar place.
Alessiona de Madena Boina, Cheva Jedo with the 3 years, like the Chivalena, the Nyawa Chivalena, the Cheva Keo Mares, Cheva Jedo was the shadow. Tesina Kazara Chadava. Tempa Jedo, Kemadu, Savana, Karasina, Konda, Sosoki, Jawa, Dojaji, Cheshawayana, Tempa Jesawayana, Diputoma, the Sozona, and Diputoma, the Nyong, Sozola Kangaji Tegura, Tempa Jenada, Majena, Sozola Kangaji Tegu, and Sozola Tonga Shuji non the world. Tuichi Chadavora, Tite. Nini Karasina, he came to say a Kemudo, Karasina Pena. 나도 충청 권이 있으나 지금도 아마 충청 권이 네가 담아다 저 제대야 돼도 단디니까 제발 제대로 들이 연구를 해 얘는 앞에 충청 집값서 소소 비판에 단디도 로치비 가서 나사 먹고 용어 지자라고 했지 충청 집값 싸샤와라고 얘는 칼라사도 만들어 봐야나리 돌고도 만들어 봐야나리 칼라비티 도도 만들어 먹고 이제 좋아요 돌로 집값서 가르쳐서는 동안 나사를 먹고 연구도 이 개무도 세 개야 수소라 강면 동안 용도에도 개무도 쓰나 어디 계산하고 자도 또 말아도 대원되라 동안 문제가 자도에도 동안 쓰이는 저거 말에 동안 좀 찍고요 말에 찍고는 동안 용도에나 아니 그 대바 제나다 맞제나다 수소라 강면 용도고 얘도 찍어도 자도 말에 있어요.
So then on the one hand it's like we shouldn't think that if we think like that, then it's dangerous and we might end up thinking that our actions don't have any consequences, right? Because, just because we do something, like if we engage in some negative actions, but then we forget that we did it, it doesn't mean that we won't face the consequences for it, right? So whether we remember doing that negative action or not, whether we remember harming someone or not, there will be consequences for that action regardless of whether we remember it or not, and then we will have to experience that. So that's one thing. But then also, we can just think about in terms of ourselves in this life. And as we said about not remembering most of our experiences as a child, right? But just because we don't remember most of the things that we did as a child doesn't mean that we don't experience the consequences of that. So if we didn't eat properly as a child, we might have various types of sicknesses now as an adult. And if we didn't wear clothes properly, or we didn't go to school properly when we were a child, we might not end up remembering those experiences. But we now face the result of those, the suffering result of those, of being uneducated or having sicknesses or things like that. So just not remembering what came before doesn't mean that it doesn't create an effect or a consequence for us later on. And since all of us don't wish to suffer, then it seems a bit strange to say that, well, I don't want to suffer, but since I'll forget the causes for those suffering, it doesn't really matter. Yeah.
때문에 추천하고 세례의 동안에는 내가 몇지기로 몇지라 가박을 슈침부터 해야만 저는 이만 가셨는데 정말 제대로 그랬어요만 사국을 지시나 아니 개 열에서 열 말했어. 저도 집으로 살아요.
It's kind of like if you just walked up to someone and slapped them across the face and then just say, "Don't worry, you'll forget in a few days." Right? So it doesn't really work like that.
And then the next question, you were talking about these lamas or yogis with the Tukdam meditation. When they pass away, if they have the power and the level of consciousness to meditate and go to this, I don't know how you call it, to this level, where are they in that moment? Until that body becomes finally dead, so the 49 days are on that time. But then also, can they, if they have this power to be, in that powerful meditation, can they choose where to go, which ground to go? Can they, just like it goes with the karma? But and then also if you reincarnate into a god realm, do you reincarnate again? Why would you reincarnate if you are already in the god realm?
These particular practitioners, or in general?
Or in general, yeah. Yes, it's the last question. No, but mainly this, if you're in the Tukdam meditation, can you decide where to go in the next life, or can you, if you are so powerful to do this, can you get out of the area?
네, Tukdam shuken detso, Tukdam shuken detso, Tukdam shuken detso. ane konso de kapsu gangza de kawa yore, chikche, nyang ane gangza de mide kong de kewa jema ki kewa lempa de ki damka yorepe, kong de kawa drona ki dam tuk yorepe, yana de yang de kewa lea chasang de mepaso tuk yorepe, yana kandis tuk yorepe.
도단이 중에 가르쳐 본 거.
dambu de ganza de kawa yorepe, 근데 zupola the shitsare, what is kong kawa yorepe. De chikche, nipa de kong de kewa lempa kewa jema de kawa lengi yume ki damka yorepe, kong la ki damka yorepe, yana kong di kewa lengi mare debe.
제가 다대기가 그러나 토단의 뉴리 부디 쇼된 게 관사라고 지요와이나 다대기가 좀 노주는 뜻이 가르자고 그래서 뭐디 쉬어야 말했어. 뭐디 가위에 쉬어야나 또 노주는 때에 엄마가 따비토는 뜻이라고 지요와이나 뭐디 간좀 수니 라야체를 여야되시냐 말했어. 단단하고 대디를 가져라. 그냥 나가고 있는 간도 써야나 뭐도 공부하다 나발을 써야나 가사도 되어서는 말했어. 하나 가사도 여 말했으면 여랬어. 여소 다르랬으면 이 풍부기 자와치바다 이기 자와치바라 되는 가사기 자와치바스야 가사대로 올라 뭔가좀 대대 샤거를 마도 이제 요 말이 기바래 단다 가르스는 12니가도 도당 요 되게 돼요 가르스는 나 가사대 풍부 다로 이도 오를 마도 가르스는 누구도네 라야라고 지요에서는 대여 말해서 우리 가와도 지지바지 다 대니가서 가려서는 대라고 지지 다 대니가서 콜라 저도 뒤로 토단 쇼되게 가자 보자라 그 주긴 안에 체 토보 연대 야부 연계지야 왜 맞도 토단 쇼되게 그래서 쇼토로 말해서 대니가서 토단 쇼 니가 별라 미시기 다 녀바다 빠치고 주년에 종바치고 쇼지 연계이나 맞도 제대로 됐어 대니가서 주년에 뭐 장주도 상도 동만이라서 저는 감 토와다고 이나 까마치 주지 진이세 그 감대와이나 저노도 너무 몽고지 깔리 잡대야기 단디 될 감대와이나 네바치아 토야도 페치와 이거 제세 가르 되시나 토다 정말 요도 이거서 뉴미기 센스야데 센 처음부터 데레마도 젠다도 하고 내가 콘도 시야데 바르서 심 나주기 심을 라파테야데 차송한 뒤에 말이야 라파 차송한 뒤에 메지 세 처음부터 요들 때온도 요들 시복 하고 돼야 지 네바다 보통 네바다 친구 하고 돼요 어떻게 네바 지주로 위해서 지금 소속이 세 네바다 띠끼리 예측을 해서 그걸 좀 지게다고 개요해서 왜 말이야 또는 알아서 소속 지기 맞다고 제요하이나 나지지 소속이 담다고 길로도하이나 지 메기 때문에 기회다고 있다 연습되는 메기실 안 주고 다 지다고니 제 라바디 이게 그 도스 빼자다고 길로도하이나 지로로 되고 세는 되다 가려는 이게 돼서는 이거 말 또 차선 파자 라바르 때문에야다 안주다니야 파자 신tin 두스지 빼자들 길로에는 빼자들 장다들 쓰고 하고야 이거 이래라 지 장다들 가르스는 템버지 하고야 네버지 하고야 어떻게 제가 용도 디니가서 쇼프야데 도단자디니까 센터모 요와이다 디니가 되게 동만디도 장조선 남타와이나 얘네들 너무 몽고지 간조하는 척지하도 네바치가 이거 이래서 지지 디니가서 가사데 공부들 리드고 나마도 조조는 라이어서 김이지 저건 이거도 가르쳐서는 초와라는 롱모 요래서야 이 가르쳐서는 그래서 수도 진짜라 가르쳐서는 다 가르쳐서는 또 번째 주기년에 제 토보 탑된 게 들리다 보지에는 초와라 지주에 된게 소설 이거를 마도 나도 받아라 나도 받아도 쇼와라 롱모 요래서는 왜 말아 시위니까서 네 가르면 문제 차 네 도자 문제 저는 야와라 로도래 야보 지문이 주게 지어야는 같이 나도 좀 기빈이를 지어내는 거를 마도 가르쳐는 나도 받아라 롱모 말해서 얘네 주기년에 제 통보 제택에 받아 몇 년에 야보 제택에 들리다 보지에는 좋아라 롱모 이게 이거 해서 이거를 지금 의미로
And so, in terms of the question of where, right, where is the person? Then, if you ask that from a Madhyamika, from a Prasangikan, like from the point of view of the philosophical school, then they would tell you that, well, there's no person to be found anywhere, anyway, right? Because if we think about, if you say, well, where is the person? Well, the person is not the arms or the legs or the body or any of that part. And likewise, it's not any particular part of the mind. So when you look for something to point at, you don't find anything like that. That doesn't mean that the person doesn't exist. The person still exists, but as we said, it exists dependently or interdependently as a dependent arising in dependence upon appearing to the mind and in dependence upon the basis of the body and the mind. So then, so that person who is abiding in the Tugdam, you could still say, as we said, that although the body is clinically dead, there is still a subtle body and mind there, which can act as the basis of designation for which to impute that person, right? But if you actually say from that side of the person, where is that person, then that doesn't exist, right? But as being merely labeled upon the subtle body and the mind that is abiding in that Tugdam, then that's where the person is, right? And then in terms of the second question, then, so these practitioners that are able to do this, that are able to actually abide in the state of Tugdam for such a long time, that's a very high level of practice, right? And so this is something that is, a practitioner would prepare for during their lifetime for a very long time, to be able to recognize the various stages of the death process and be able to recognize the very moment of death when the very subtle mind becomes manifest. So, and at that time, what they are doing during that Tugdam meditation is that they're meditating on bodhicitta and emptiness, right? But because it is utilizing that very subtle mind at that moment, then it's kind of like if if they meditate on bodhicitta and emptiness for like a minute, it's like us doing it for like years and years and years. It's so much more effective because of utilizing that very subtle mind. And it's kind of like we can think that, for us, for example, if we're trying to study something, right, then we're not using that subtle mind. We're using our coarse mind, including our senses and our thinking mind, which is considered very coarse levels of mind. And so these are very prone to distraction, right? We're trying to study, but actually the TV's on, or we're fidgeting with something, or we're hearing music, or something like that. So we're not really able to get really absorbed into the studies in a very concentrated way. But at the time of death, you go through these various stages of dissolution where the body has undergone clinical death, so you're no longer hearing or seeing or all of these eye consciousness and ear consciousness are no longer there. And all that's left is this very subtle mental consciousness, so devoid from all these distractions, including various types of conceptuality. So devoid of all of that is really able to be very much absorbed into this meditation on bodhicitta and emptiness, and that's why it's so powerful. And in dependence upon that, then yes, if someone is a very high-level practitioner and they're able to practice like that, then they would be able to kind of choose where they are reborn, because they even eliminate rebirth altogether because of the power of that meditation to propel one along the path so much in such a very short period of time.
As we are all here, so we must have some karma left. So that's why we are all here. So how we can find these karma and karma to get related so that we can focus on the moon?
On the?
Like as the Buddha said, we have to focus on the moon to get free from samsara. So as we are all here, so there must be some karma left. So that's it. So how one can find his or her karma or karma so that without any distraction, without any someone is pulling us, we can really focus on the moon to get freedom from samsara.
And it's just someone dila de yorowa, and it's someone the core de yorowa, and it's Christian gila le jamin dra pa de yorowa, and it's just and it's just on the impersonal so countries the tarpa tobia ki turpa dila the koa le tarpe to ki turpa the kegre that's not to the le didn't mampu yona and the young didn't ki sem yeng ne the barche chegewa and it's on countries not to the le di mepasu gore then some of the mepasuna and not to the tarpa to the lo kiwa this lawa marpes
tabachiya di lo de
di kiela peche di natsuki le di mekasugwa and chetan kandes tigre
chetan ho tere so ra tang ado karese na jewa thoma me ban sa shi ya ke le tong ra to chura mong bu ji ye de ye na yang de ngara to tan di gi lu tin di to le te me ba so ye karese ne nyem tab ju gon sha dam chi karese tab shi de pe na ten ji ta 아니 니바라 라도 비타 니보 군데 주비타 아니 가르스나 어떻게 답이 쉬어 앞에나 가르스나 소원다고 가르스나 소도베 좀 내지 답잖아 장로도 세제다 지야다 원도 동아 권이 조사 사사기 디파 가르 사사기 제데 산제다 세진이 생고와예자 배 산제라 장로 제와다 아니 가르스나 신제라 신제가 되지 아니 니바 가르스나 딱 뭐만 저거 니바 제다 저바 쇼다고 지야 저바 쇼다고 지 디바데 바디 체데 친디 가르스나 니보군도 집이 딱 송데 아니 가르스나 니바데 저바데 제 되니 니보군도 집이 딱 디바데 다외치데 단지 차차 초바표와 감대지야 아니 제 맨라표야 가르이나 디바 다야치 타는 드리지겨레 타마들라 신진이 늘 쏘라 가지 디바데 메지냐데 담지기 본데 답시 이거니 저런 게 소소가 따야버지 제도와 있는 디바 체데 디바 간도 지와에는 니보 딱이 근데 샤야에 다야에서 다디 소소기 베트용 답주고는 샤네 디바데 다토고 요라라 데 다야기 체데 저 가르치고 그랬던 거라서 코비니들 좋았지 코알 가르스나 코비니들 동아기 마시에 봐도 코아들 다들 그러지 가는지 야보지 타와이나 되게 님 답주고는 샤니 요아니 디바 가르치에 있는 다서 그래 Sidi Dibatab Chichi Sami de Zoyana, Nimutabi when the Shawayana, Diba Madaki years in the Yamaris, Dibataya years ago.
So of course, all of us have like limitless, countless different actions that are present within our mental continuum since we've been cycling in samsara since beginningless time, right? So it's not just that we have like one or two of these actions sitting around in our mental continuum, but rather it's kind of countless, limitless numbers of actions. So of course, yeah, these actions, due to the fact that they give rise to various sufferings and so forth for us, and they kind of they give rise to the various habits that we have, can become an obstacle to us practicing the path. So to that extent, there is a method to help purify the various negative actions that we accumulate, known as the 4 opponent powers. Yeah? And so these 4 opponent powers are the power of refuge, the power of regret, the power of the remedy, and the power of restraint. And so in terms of the first, refuge, meaning going for refuge to the 3 jewels of refuge of Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, but likewise also generating bodhicitta, thinking to benefit all sentient beings, right? Because any negative action that we have accumulated will always be done with respect to either the 3 jewels of refuge or with respect to sentient beings, right? They are the objects of our harmful actions, either the 3 jewels of refuge or sentient beings. And so in order to address those 2 objects, we, in terms of the 3 jewels, we take refuge, and in terms of the sentient beings, we generate bodhicitta, this mind wishing to attain enlightenment for their benefit, the mind wishing to benefit them. And so having done that, then we think about our various negative actions that we have engaged in this lifetime, or that we may have engaged in previous lifetimes, and generate a deep sense of regret for having developed these actions, for having accumulated these actions. Meaning understanding how these actions are negative, how they cause harm for ourselves and others, and so thinking that generating this very strong sense of regret with respect to having accumulated those. And then the third power of the remedy is then that in order to kind of offset, or in order to act as an opponent power to the non-virtue that we created, we engage in some kind of virtuous activity. And so this can be like prostrations or making offerings or any kind of, but actually it's anything, any kind of virtuous activity that we do with the wish to purify our negative karma will act as this third power, or the power of the remedy. And then finally the 4th power of restraint is that thinking, okay, so now having regretted this action, a negative action, thinking that I shouldn't repeat those actions again in the future. Because if we really recognize that action as being negative and only causing harm to ourselves and others, then naturally that idea of not wishing to repeat that action will grow stronger in us. But then reinforcing that with the 4th power, the power of restraint, of trying to kind of making this determination not to repeat the action again. So by way of practicing these 4 powers with respect to the various karmas that we have accumulated in the past, we can help purify these various negative actions, which will leave our mind in a better state to be able to then practice the path and attain liberation, and thereby kind of eliminate the power of these karma altogether.
Nesibu Yochid, Yunshiwaina, Penamato Karesawina, Dajatamba Corona Chashawina, Lodokawajin, Sonji Basipares. Just the Dajatimbi Pumboteda, Arosa Dada, Dajatama Lodokawachi, the Pumboteda, Dada Arosa, the Pumbot Chivake, the K, and Chibichuris. Dajatamba Lodokawachi, the Pumbodi, how many Kutalati of the Yakumujere, Charity Pumbore, Dada Arosa of the Pamukata Pumbot Dedes. Just that the college, Beijing, sort of college and Beijing, and Sanji Diores. In some Tarang also limited, door rate of Militin, Yashit, Militin is about. Militi in Chongi, Courage Delta, and Soso Mini College and Bezichua, and Dr. Said the lecture, Jelon, Tamjanda, and Chi, and then Courage Soso Mini College and Dr. She was Shema Tabi Component did in Dr. When a Dada Damasia, Sanji, between deep in the Delaware, Damashiki. 지지 말았어야 돼. 지지 이렇게 손지야 되는데 말아서 내야 되는데 집에 지도를 봐도 내가 제가 집어도 계획해서 내가 말해. 수준이 비슷해 맞지. 깔리 맞아. 수준만 이제 와디 주제리 맞아. 수준이 지와 있는 유tin 득 되는 가르치는 제대야. 어떻게 이거를 다 되듯이 되어 되지는데라.
So then just to add a bit to that, then it's really up to us, right? It's all in our hands. So the goal, if the goal is to attain enlightenment or liberation from samsara, then it's really down to us putting effort into practicing to accumulate virtuous actions and likewise purifying or eliminating our non-virtuous actions. And this is completely down to us. It's something that we can achieve due to this precious human life that we currently have, where we have all these freedoms and opportunities to engage in the practice in the best way possible. Because if we think about it actually in terms of our body that is giving us this particular rebirth and the opportunities that we have right now, then our body is technically no different than that of the Buddha himself, right? And on the basis of that body, he, went out of the palace and attained enlightenment and so forth. So in the same way, we kind of have the same type of body with the same freedom and opportunity. So also for us, if we make that kind of an effort, we too are able to attain that, even in this very lifetime. So in terms of the body, this is kind of the best type of body to attain within samsara, right? And it's the same body that people like the Buddha himself or the great Yogi Milarepa and so forth, it's the same body that they have. And they were able to attain enlightenment in that single lifetime. So also for us, we should be encouraged by this, thinking that it is really down to us that if we put the effort in and we really work hard, we too can be liberated from samsara by way of engaging in the practice.
So I think actually the negative karma. Maybe let's say you are not any negative karma. But like in the samsara, someone has a male body, someone has a female body. So just by the act of the nature, what is my karma? Why I am this male body? Why someone is in a female body? There must be certain karmas like for female body. There must be some as an act of the nature. Why I am in this male body? Why is someone is in the female body?
And so,
we are in the body, exactly we are in the body. But someone is in the male body, someone is in the female body. So as per act of the nature, maybe some positive karma is like just ask for the nature. What's like maybe some nature wants to do something through his body. So that's why nature has given me this male body. That's why nature has given this female body. So maybe nature wants to do something with his body. Because there is difference in the body. Someone is male, someone is female.
In a kongichodi tachete chetang gichena de karechene michi o pumo la kewalangire and chig pu kewalangire and the kare le ngempadang yapoki kechamare radi inangi mikashi de pu kewalangire mikashi pumo kewalangire and chesan di karechene den yongire the kefara kane yongire leki wangire ne yang karekile sotto matena kiro
ade ped gashi pe jiwale ado gashi pomochi ala ya teso ani bare
no de 그냥 가르치는 렉 가르키 왕기 푸키어 가르 부모랑게
제도 편지기 레라다 들이지데 제바시다 저 의미에 된거 그래. 근데 가르스는 미지원 편지 리딩 아주 추천송이야 되죠. 된도라도 미 공부 지와데 안에 제대 편지 가르스는 안에 추천송이야 되 차고. 인자기 리 제대다 추천송이야 되 이자지. 얘는 영 가시 포지다 가시 뭐지 레마데 지원에게 강사 그런 게요. 자식 돈이 용도 가시제 포가 차는데 차비왕기 아니 가르스는 뭐를 지원해도야다 안 가시제 가르스는 뭐를 차비왕기 포를 지원해도야 어떤 둘이 자식 왕기 아니 둘이 소소 대비 왕기 레디 지여디네요 걔는 내가 되게 왕기 아니 지 부모비 지와 제가 지내게 매도 되게 되었어 얘는 시포도 둘이가 다 줘야는 개미디 편지 레디 집하다 버렸대 얘네요 가르스는 대비 왕기 또 포는 내가 얘기해도 지 둘이 지원하는 게도 말은 내가 얘기해도 둘이 대비 왕기 원치 집안에 있는 거 매도서 야다. 그래서 다 주부터 이렇게 매서 쓰고 동안
So yeah, I mean, in terms of whatever type of rebirth we take, that's just down to our particular karma, right? There's nothing that is driving us towards a particular rebirth, this particular rebirth as opposed to this particular rebirth, other than our karma, meaning the types of actions that we have accumulated in the past. So it is simply based on whatever actions we have accumulated that we take this particular rebirth or that particular rebirth. So then in terms of taking a human rebirth as either male or female, then in terms of the projecting action, it's exactly the same. It's just the action that projects rebirth as a human. But then in terms of the particular differences, because there's many humans that have great variety to them, so then in the details of which type of human rebirth one takes, then again, it's just down to one's own particular karma that one has accumulated in the past. And so in terms of maybe male and female, it just might be that one kind of had a greater desire to be male or a greater desire to be female, and those kind of actions led one to accumulate the relevant karma to be reborn as a male or a female. But again, this is just kind of guesswork, because really at the end of the day, the specifics of karma are very obscure to us, and so thinking about what specific cause gives rise to a specific event is really just down to the Buddha.